podcast, Google Hangouts show, I, along with my good friend Anders, are going to talk about what suffering is and give you some tools to overcome it so you can experience more authentic and genuine happiness now. Welcome to the show. My name is Matt Belair, and I am a high-performance coach for athletes and individuals. And today on the show, I have my good friend Anders Peterson, who is an insanely talented artist and all-around conscious and empowering individual. Welcome, Anders.
Thanks, Matt.
No problem, man. It's great to have you on the show. We've been talking about doing this for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to finally sit down and put some thoughts out there for everyone to sort of be involved with,
Yeah, and I think it's important to say, what we were just talking about before we started this podcast is our intention for the show. And you said some excellent things about just saying that this is more of just a dialogue on some subjects that are important, and we hope that with us just having a dialogue about them, that it can help bring about a more positive or empowering perspective for people.
Yeah, totally. I think that our goal here isn't really to, like I said earlier, solve the world's problems. It's kind of just about lending a voice, giving people a platform to contemplate topics. And we're not saying that we're anyone special, and if anything, that's why it's important, because we're as normal as anybody else. We live normal lives, and these are sort of the things that we tackle in our lives, and I think it's important to open a dialogue about that with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess the first thing to get into is that old Buddhist saying that life is suffering. One interesting thing that I came across was a book from Alan Watts, The Way of Zen, which oddly enough was one of the most difficult reads I have ever had. I had to literally download a dictionary on my phone because every few paragraphs I had no idea what words he was using. He's way too bloody smart. But in that book, he explains that the direct translation from life is suffering is a little bit, it's not as accurate as it could be. He says more accurately, life is frustrating, which is extremely true. And I think the whole, life is suffering, and that's the whole, what is it that they say? The root of desire is, or the root of suffering is desire. And I think it's, desiring a way that it should be, and that's where, life is suffering or life is frustrating, is you want it to be this way, and you go outside and, the universe and the world just keeps kind of messing with you. You don't get to school on time, or this happens and that happens. And the more you kind of attach to this is the way it should be, I should have just got to school easily and all of these problems shouldn't have happened. The more you attach to how you wanted it to be, the more frustrated or suffering that you build within yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, one of the big things, especially these days, is that there's a lot of expectation. We live in a society where we expect a lot from ourselves, and we have people around us that, generally speaking, expect a lot from us. And I think that, when we can't reach that level of expectation, or we're fighting adversity to get to that point where we think other people want us to be or we should be, we hit frustration, and that's exactly right. And I think that is a big cause for suffering, and different types of suffering, and that's another thing, is that it's important to mention that, suffering has many different faces, and it's different for everybody. Like, my personal definition of it might be different than yours, but I think they all kind of come from the same pattern. And that is sort of expectation and frustration with not being able to achieve that expectation.
Yeah, definitely agree with all that. Well, and at the beginning of the show, I titled it, suffering, depression, and anxiety. What to you is the difference between each of those, if anything?
Yeah, good question. I think suffering kind of encompasses all of it. So I think anxiety and depression sit as subcategories inside suffering. Suffering can be anything. You can have moments of suffering that last seconds in your day, or you can have moments of suffering, a moment, it may last for years. And I think just because of this topic, we'll stick to the two categories of suffering as anxiety or depression or, whatever these other things might be. We'll just stick with those. So depression is, in my eyes, it's being too attached to the past, worrying too much about things that have happened. And whereas anxiety might be worrying about things that are going to happen, but no matter what it is, what you're dealing with is an imbalance of not being able to sit in your current state, in your current place. It's like you're not balanced. I guess that's what it is. And it's not like to say like, oh my God, you're chemically imbalanced. Like I think there are reactions that happen in the mind where you have chemical reactions, but anxiety and depression are just polar opposites of one another, but they're caused by the same thing. It's just whether you're going forwards or backwards. You know what I mean? Instead of sitting where you are right now and appreciating it. Yeah,
totally. Well, when you were saying that, I thought about a quote. We actually talked about it last week or earlier by Lao Tzu, and it's the one where he says, if you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present. Totally. And I think that's essentially what you were, just saying. And I think today, more than any time ever, it's so easy for us to live anywhere else but the moment. The distractions that youth have, or even our generation, because we were the ones that kind of, grew up with the start of Facebook, with the start of social media, and now the kids, they just naturally have it. So they're constantly checking Facebook, Twitter, or whatever distraction, right? And they're not fully in awareness. They're not fully in the present. So I think as that repeats itself over and over and over again, it kind of creates a bigger problem. And they really need to just kind of learn how to be in the present and, and experience it, whether it's good or bad or anything in between.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, that's the big thing is how immediate we're used to having reactions to things. Like you said, having Twitter or Facebook and having immediate access to all this information, and that's really good in a learning environment. But I think what happens on a personal level when, other people, like I said earlier, are expecting things from you and they expect it in that same lightning fast response time. We're used to having things at our fingertips, but we're used to the internet giving that to us. And when you expect that of a human to respond in that way, I think this is where a lot of people's, worries start to come from. And I guess at this juncture, it's important to mention that anxiety is something that I've dealt with, I suffered, like I definitely suffered for years dealing with it. And it all, I think, now looking back, stemmed from people having really high expectations, wanting me to perform at a really high level, career-wise. And, that eventually wore me down and not being able to take a moment. You're constantly worrying about, okay, what do I have to do next? And I have to do it quickly. And you don't really have time to process it. You just have to act. And so it almost rewired my brain to constantly be thinking about what's next, and never really be present in what I'm doing or what I was doing in the moment. And, do that for long enough and better believe your brain will rewire itself because, it's a crazy experience. It's a crazy experience, but that's totally it. It's that lightning fast response time that we're used to. I think that's causing these problems in a lot of young people. That's why it's more common in this day and age, because technology actually is a huge factor. It's a huge benefit, but it's a huge detriment at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Well, when we had first met, that's kind of when you were, in that mindset a little bit. And, going through some stuff. And I remember talking to you, about it and just seeing you a little bit down, but I could also see, obviously who you are as an individual, which is a, extremely, extremely talented artist. And, to me, I was like, this guy's got the world at his fingertips, but he can't see it, he can't see it. And he's working himself to the bone, and I was just kind of so confused. For people that are going through that experience, and even me talking to you, like I said, I think that you told me like at the time you just couldn't see it. What would be, your biggest piece of advice for somebody really going through a tough time, whether it's anxiety or depression? And I want to touch on something, when you talk about your anxiety, but something that maybe like they can use, because when you're in that dark space, and I've been there too, I've struggled with depression. My depression, that's more my background with the darkness, was just being so darn confused on why we still had war. Why do we still have people starving to death? Why we have an epidemic of starvation and obesity at the exact same time? It's like we can't put something together to help these people. Like we can't send them rice. Can we stop murdering people? Through thousands and thousands. So when I kind of really realized how messed up the world was, it's super challenging for me. So when you're in that really dark place and it sucks so bad, what for you was if anything like a tool that helped, or something that you would recommend to somebody that is going through that and maybe can help them?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say that you're, and I'll try and work it in, but I think you saying that off the bat, that it's worry. You're worrying about war and famine. And these are all things that definitely concern all of us. But they're also things that we don't really have control of on a grand scale. It's not like, oh man, my plants are thirsty, I'll go give them some water. Like that's something that's totally within your grasp. But when there's an entire country who's, having a drought and they don't have fresh water, they don't have, enough food, like that's something that's big and it's out of your control. So it's easy to fall into a mind state that triggers depression or anxiety. It's all the same thing. And for me, like when I finally see that, because the big thing is when these things start happening, and I guess they start happening for different people at different times in your life. For me, like I was in my mid 20s, so I had lived, 25 years and very happy most of the time, and outgoing and whatever. And then all of a sudden, this thing came over me, and I was like, well, I must be losing my mind. Like I must be going crazy, because this isn't me. This is not something that I feel. And so after the initial almost like denial, like, oh, that, that can't be real. Once I accepted, like, this is what I am, this is what I have. Like, yeah, I went searching for it, because I went searching for a cure, because, the crazy thing to me is that the second you walk into a doctor's office and you say, I have depression, I have anxiety, I have all these different things, the first thing they do is they give you medication. That's like their first go-to, is like, well, let's give you these for a while and see what happens, and then we'll move forward. And it's like, man, you want to medicate me right away. Like you haven't even, instead of saying like, here's some pills, why don't you be like, what's wrong? Like maybe you need someone to talk to. Maybe it's not just about medicating people. And so I decided right there, I was like, okay, I kind of took it in that moment, and I took the pills home, and I kind of put them in the cupboard, and I was like, if it gets really bad, if it gets to the point where I'm not going to make it, then I'll take one. But I am not taking one of these unless I'm like, it's going to kill me. You know what I mean? Because I'm not a pill guy. I never really have been. So that kind of set me on my quest, because I knew right then, I was like, well, if I'm not going with medication, I got to find an alternative method. And so that was about 3.5 years ago now. And lots happened in that 3 years, a lot of good things and a lot of bad things. And the one thing that I can say for sure, like above all things, was meditation. And I know that a lot of people say that, like, oh man, you got to meditate. And it's, you know what? A lot of people, they're like, oh, I can't do that. I can't meditate. Because it's kind of like it has like a mystical connotation, and a lot of normal people, that don't connect with the spiritual realm, they're like, I can't accept that. But the thing is it's just about sitting quietly and calmly and learning how to like experience your thoughts, and just going like, I'm just going to relax. I'm just going to sit here and relax And if it gets really wild and I can't handle it, man, like if you gotta lay down for a minute, breathe slowly, almost put yourself to sleep. That's what I would have to do, because my anxiety gets so intense that I couldn't even cope with my own thoughts. It was like panic. It was fight or flight, and sometimes both, So meditation really taught me how to calm down. And at first it's like impossible. You really got to face it head on and know that you can do it. Like you can do it. Like, that's the only way I got through it. I'd rather, if I'm going to die from this, then I'm going to die from this. But until I get taken out of this game, I'm going to play the game. So you got to play the game the best you can. And if that means facing things that terrify you, you have to do that. That's the only way. And, it might not be the brightest way to say it. A lot of people want easy, safe, painless answers. But the truth is you're in that position for a reason, because your state of mind was taken somewhere that, sort of influences that. And the only way out is to fight for it. It's to fight to rewire yourself. So getting back to it, meditation was a huge one. Exercise was a huge one. Mainly yoga, not too stress intensive, just exercises that get the blood moving, they oxygenate the body, and they make you relaxed. Like, so you're loose, but you're strong, you feel confident, and it takes away some of the tension that builds up from all these different things. And that coupled with, honestly, a diet, like a healthier diet. Not to say I didn't eat poorly, but you can always improve a diet. And I think just that alone speaks wonders for people, So those three things were sort of the pillars of what got me out of that.
Man, well, so good answers. And so when you're talking there, I was thinking so many things. So I'm gonna try to bring up, what that was for me. I think the first thing was when you're talking about your anxiety and how intense it was. People seeing you talk now, they might think like, oh, this guy's kind of got it together and he's happy. But
I do now.
Anxiety was
now, but that's not something.
Yeah. And you're saying your anxiety was so bad that, if I have to die from this, like that's how intense it was. If I have to exit, if this thing kills me, this is the way I'm going out. And I can't imagine, it being more intense than that. And then even in that state, having the ability to attempt meditation, to go into that silent place, because I think for me, a lot of the anxiety or depression or people really feeling that they have no control is because they don't have control of their mind. And Zen, they'll call it the monkey mind. So as your mind is just going off on all of these different things that could happen, good and bad, and obviously if you're anxious and depressed, they're going to be mostly bad. You don't have the ability to stop the tape. You don't have the ability to stop running this tape in your mind. And meditation is the ability to enter the void, to not to make it sound mystical, but your center point, to shut off the mind, because you're not your conscious thoughts, and if you don't have control of what your mind is continuously doing, then you don't have really control over yourself. So this concept is pretty much the first thing that I'll teach any pro athlete or any person that I do consulting for, even in business or life, is like, you have to be able to shut off your mind, because in that place and in that void is where you're going to find that real deep experience with yourself and connection to all things. And most importantly, you're going to have more control over that internal dialogue and that internal tape that continues to run and run and run, whether you like it or not. And I think that a lot of people, they live their lives in a kind of white noise state, where they wake up and then they go to work and then they experience work throughout the day, and then they're done work and then they go home and maybe get a meal and watch some TV and go to bed, and never take any kind of time for self-reflection and never take any time to be in the moment, because when they're waking up, they need to get food in them and dress to get to work. On the way to work, they're thinking about all the crap that they have to do that day. When they're at work, they're maybe focused on one task, but then thinking about all the other tasks and then what they have to do when they get home. So they're in this constant state of white noise and never in this nice, like centered space of just silence to kind of connect with themselves and get a handle on everything that's going around. It's so busy and so frantic, and it's a reflection of their mind state. For me, when I do meditation, it slows the whole day down. It slows everything down. But if I don't, it's sped up as my mind just kind of goes and goes and goes. It's never ending, just like the mind is never ending. And the other really awesome thing that I like that you said was yoga and healthy diet. And a lot of people think that, you know, you need to do all these special things, or you got to go to a yoga retreat or go to Nepal, which we have both done, which was awesome. But you can have all those things here. You don't need to go find a yogi. You don't need to go anywhere. It's all here. It's all in your environment at any time. And it's really simple things. The power of your diet can change everything. You know, I went from eating just total, pretty much garbage, you know, like lots of pizzas and whatever. And I, you know, just had more fruits, more vegetables, and I was conscious of what I was eating. It changed the way I thought. It changed the way I felt. It changed my energy levels. So it doesn't have to be this huge dramatic thing, but realizing that taking care of your body, what you put into your body, and, you know, giving your mind some practice, giving yourself some time in silence to reflect on who and what you are, can put the brakes on anxiety, depression, and the mental tape. For me, from an NLP, you know, perspective, or a strict mindset perspective, it's understanding that tape, that recurring tape that's in your mind, and switching it. So I think that you really said some awesome things. And it's not mystical. It's not complicated. It's not special. It's right. You know, it's what you have to do to change it. But the patterns in some people are so hardwired. It's so hard to break. So
yeah, and I think that the big thing for me that I, you know, because I don't have any formal teaching in meditation, it was something that I was almost forced into having to learn. And it wasn't even like I really realized what I was doing. It was more just, I got to shut the brain off. I've got to stop that tape that you talked about from running. And I think that it's not even about, like you said, you know, sitting down and thinking about who or what you are. Because for me at a time, like, that was way too big, man. Like, going beyond the physical right here, like what's in front of me, that's as far as I could go. There's nothing else. Like, it's just right here. It's like survival mode. I was in survival mode, man. And, you know, one of the big things I realize is when I sit down and I try and just be quiet, it was that tape that was feeding the problem. And the thing you got to remember, that maybe, you know, for those of you who don't have anxiety, it's really hard to understand what it is. It's really hard to, you know, everybody's like, oh yeah, I felt anxiety. Like, you know, I go in late for work, or I have a serious work project that I have to finish, or homework, or anything like that. And yeah, we feel different variations of anxiety, but for me, it was a general anxiety disorder. So it would come on so strong where I'd be like, I gotta like go home and like lay down and like turn the lights off and try and get this under wraps, you know, like I couldn't breathe. I thought I was having heart attacks. Like, you know, I'm in my 20s, so it seemed a little far-fetched, but you don't know. It's your mind playing tricks on itself. It's fighting itself. And then what happens is you feel the sensation, and then the sensation triggers a deeper sensation, and it feeds off itself, because you start, the fear of it builds and it builds and it builds, and then you're just like, I'm gonna pass out or I'm gonna die. Like, it's, you know, you just don't know what it is. So for me, the big thing was learning how to stop my brain, not necessarily from thinking, but thinking in a dialogue. So you know, when we think to ourselves, usually we're talking to ourselves in our head. And you'll notice, you'll sit down and you'll be like listing off all the things you have to do in a day. But you're just talking to yourself. Like, you can hear your own voice in your head. And every time I'd hear that, I'd stop. I'd be like, cut. You know, I just imagine these giant scissors cutting through a rope, and the rope would be like my dialogue. That was my visualization for it. So the second I'd cut through it, it would just disintegrate. And then I'm like, oh, there's no dialogue. So then what is it? You know, then you're just left with the emotions. You're not surrounded by that white noise. There's no noise. It's not auditory. Then it becomes emotional, you know, and you can kind of start to face the real problems when you cut out the dialogue. But that's long time. That took a really long time to get to that point, and it wasn't easy. It really wasn't easy. It felt like torture. I would really never wish it on anybody. So, yeah, I think my biggest thing though to let everybody know is that if you're going through this stuff, the one thing that got me through it was honestly just sheer faith in the fact that there has to be a way to get back to where I was. There has got to be a way, and that sheer belief in knowing that some kind of good has to come out of this, like really it has to be something, is what got me to a place where now I don't experience any of these feelings at all. Like they're completely gone. 3 years, and it's really only been about 1.5 years now that I haven't felt anything, but who knows, man, it's, at least it's motivating, and at least it's like you guys can do it. There is a way through it. So to have the faith every time you practice, and take it the way you need to take it, but you got to quiet the mind. That's it. And however you got to do that, do it. Just, drug thing wasn't my thing. And hopefully it's most people agree with me, because I think that's immediately giving up when you take the drugs.
Yeah, well, man, you said lots of so many good things, and from my background, again, doing the sports, when you're talking about how you visualize cutting the tape, that's just such a fundamental understanding of your awareness and what you create as the creator or the experiencer or the consciousness or whatever. Where when you're going throughout your day, most people never even understand or pay attention to what's running through their mind. Like that's a fundamental thing for a human to do to elevate their consciousness, is to be like, what the heck do I keep saying to myself? What is that? So you realized intuitively like that had to stop, that wasn't you, because we're not just our consciousness, we're not just these thoughts, these random things. And that's what meditation teaches you, is to observe and not to be attached with the internal dialogue. So, one of the big tools that I would tell people is exactly what you said there. So as you're going about your day and you have a thought or a feeling, or you're saying a word or sentence like I feel terrible or whatever the case may be, start with your words. If you're talking about the things that you don't want or really hurt, if you have to do it briefly, and then ask yourself, so what do I want? And this is something brilliant that my friend, the author of the Law of Attraction book, Michael Lozier, would always say in his book, if people are attracting things that they don't want to their lives, because most of the time they're talking about it. And I like to say one step further is really analyze that internal dialogue. What are you thinking about? What's that internal tape running? Because if you're feeling anxious or depressed, that internal tape is probably not positive. So when you start to register that tape, and it's a thought that makes you anxious or depressed, so ask yourself, so what do I want? And it can be something simple, like just a little bit of a better feeling thought, right? So if you're extremely depressed and you go to just slightly depressed, that's a win in that case. And that's how you go up this scale. It's just one tiny step at a time. It's not this giant leap to euphoria. And even when you get to a place where you are feeling good, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. You just have a more powerful perspective to deal with things. And so yeah, learning to register that tape. Whenever you feel, a thought or emotion or a scenario that's not ideal or causes anxiety, causes depression, causes you to kind of seize up, think, so what do I want? So I want to be at peace with this. I want to handle this in the best way possible. I want to just have awareness here. I want to feel good within myself. So whatever kind of thought or thing that you have that you can say to get you to a little bit better of a feeling place, that's going to be super useful for you. And I kind of want to transition that into, making sure that we talk about it, because you've been saying a few really great tools on how to overcome anxiety and depression and things like that. And I want to kind of touch on a couple more that for me are really, really powerful. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about, bringing more happiness into your life, authentic happiness, not, changing it. It's like, oh yeah, it's positive and sunshine and rainbows when it's not, right? Real, genuine happiness. And my biggest tool is perspective, choosing the most powerful perspective that you can have for the things that you can't change. And that kind of leads in with the old Zen teaching of surrender. You know, all these tools are ancient and timeless, and they're simple. You know, surrendering to the fact that we never had control to begin with, surrendering to the fact that things can happen, but where our real power comes from is our choice, and our choice to, you know, and how we're going to react to these situations. So choosing the most empowering state of mind or empowering perspective. And I guess a good example of this would be for you to speak on that. And, you know, we've really touched on a lot of awesome things, and I think that we're running out of time, but I would love for you to briefly touch on it. I can't imagine anything worse than what's happened to you recently in losing your father, and going through all that pain and emotion, and, you know, and you were really close with him. So what for you, you know, how were you able to deal with that? And, you know, what would you say to someone else dealing with really a loss? Maybe it could be of a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a partner or a child or something. You know, what for you really helped to overcome that and kind of see, you know, deal with it completely? Because, you know, a lot of people will take an experience like that and shove it under the rug, right? And that's definitely not the way to go, because you have to feel the pain and the hurt and the loss and the sadness and all that kind of stuff. But in your perspective and your choice from once, you know, surrendering to the universe, realizing that these things are going to happen, how can you move forward with that in the most powerful and positive way?
Yeah. You know, I think that was really the big test for me was, you know, in that moment was, okay, so if this thing's going to rear its head, it's going to do it now. And surprisingly, it didn't. But I think, you know, dealing with death is different for everybody. And I think for me, you kind of answered it. It was surrendering and, you know, the accepting surrender, knowing that it's out of your control. And like, it wasn't because of me that my father passed away. You know, that wasn't my fault. And that's just sort of life, right? And it's accepting that in life, a lot of things happen that we have absolutely no control over. What we do have control over is how we face adversity and we face these situations. So I think, you know, I'm still here. And the best way I can honor the loss of someone's life, especially my father, would be to live the best life I can live, because he gave me life. You know what I mean? So just holding that close to me really got me through it. And yeah, so every day is a struggle, man. And it, you know, and that's life as well. Struggling and suffering are a part of life, but I think at the end of the day, it's how you greet the day. You know, how are you going to get up in the morning and say, like, this might be the best day of my life? Setting your day with that intention and just going like, it's going to be better than yesterday. And I don't know how that's going to happen, but it's going to be, you know, and just having that hope and putting effort towards it. That really saved me through the whole thing, you know?
Yeah, man. Well, that's awesome. And thanks for sharing that, because, you know, that's an experience that a lot of people don't really want to talk about. And I admire you for watching how you went through it, right? Because there's a lot of, that's an easy experience to go through, to really go back into having a painful experience, right? And, you know, with talking about the most empowering perspective, that's our only real power, is how, like you said, how we respond to these things that we cannot change. And that's what gives us our power, and that's how we create, and that's how we affect the world. So you coming out of this and dealing with it in a powerful way, and in a way that can help you grow, that affects your friends, your community, the world, that little tiny ripple. Or if you go into it and you allow it to control you, and, you know, you go down the spiral, it affects your friends, your community, your world, and it all filters out. So, and you finding that perspective within yourself to be able to handle with a tough situation, you know, you grow as an individual, and then you also, in your actions and example, you help others. And a lot of people, I think too, they get overwhelmed or depressed. I think that for me, especially, and for you, is wanting to fix the whole world, seeing how broken it is and how it can be very challenging at times. And in order to fix the world, we fix ourselves. And that's really all we can do. And that's all we're asked to do, and showing, someone a smile when you get coffee, and being there and being fully present in that kindness and those gestures. You're doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing. You don't need to have this massive grand scale to be worthy or to be making a change. That's the change that's being asked of you. It's all a catalyst for you to grow. And, you could witness it and say, oh my goodness, like this hurts. What can I do about it? How can I be a better person? How can I affect my community? And like, that's what's, being asked. And one of the big tools that I wanted to touch on for bringing in more happiness into your life would be the power of gratitude. We have so much to be grateful for. It's such a high vibration. It's such a high thought. It's such a positive feeling. There's so much to be grateful for. And if you can see the world through grateful eyes, you can really change a lot of things. I've met some of the most privileged people in the world, with the world at their fingertips, business, sports, whatever. And I've met some people with very limited circumstances in Cambodia and Nepal, and eating the same meal every single day. And the level of happiness, really, the wealth isn't the thing. It can be a tool if you're centered, but they're really grateful for spending time with their family, for the things that they have. So if we can get into a thought process of being great, waking up, and what are the 5 things you're grateful for? We always take it for granted, right? For me, I'll talk about my family and my friends continuously every day. Thank you for my family. Thank you for my friends. Thank you for my health. I feel healthy today. I can go skateboarding. I can go snowboarding. And we'll do this pattern of, a couple days or a few weeks where we just take it for granted. But then what happens? What happens if, like what happened to you, you lose a family member, you lose a friend, or something happens to me and, snowboarding isn't as easy. So it's all these little things that we kind of take for granted. If we can just, really focus and really feel that gratitude, because we are literally, being in North America or Europe, the top 10% of the world, if not the top 5%, we can do anything. So when we're grateful for the cars we drive, or the public transportation, or our education, or, the ability to have, go out and eat and have a roof over our heads, and just really simplify it and really, really be grateful, you can transform your life. Because in gratitude, it's hard to stay depressed and it's hard to stay anxious, because it's all there, right? In that moment of gratitude, it's all there. Thank you. I am whole. I am present. And that's another practice of becoming present with the moment in a grateful way is extremely powerful. And the more you can do that, the more you're sending out that energy frequency of gratitude. So the universe is going to want to match that and bring you more things to be grateful for. And it's also going to change your state of mind, what wiring is going on there, whatever chemical concoctions that your brain is cooking up. The more you can get to these positive states, the more it's going to create more of those in your, neural synapses and all that kind of fun stuff. I don't want to get into the science of it, but it does change the way that you think, and then the way that you feel by the way your brain works. And like you talked about, a little bit of meditation and conscious breathing, like the Wim Hof. If you don't know who Wim Hof, you got to look him up. And our friend Angle, who does these breath workshops, which is just kind of another form of conscious breathing or meditation that changes the wiring in your mind. And Wim Hof goes even further and talks about how it affects your central nervous system. And that's how you create change. So that's my rant. And I don't know if you want to add on to some of that, but I really wanted to talk about the power of gratitude and maybe hear your 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I think you really touched on things there, and I could definitely go on and on because there's a lot that kind of goes into it. But I think for me, gratitude is huge. But even on a simpler level, just set your intention, be positive, and start there. And once you start feeling positivity, like I think gratitude is sometimes hard for people to grasp because the they're not necessarily used to feeling gratitude, and like you were saying, you've met people in Nepal, Cambodia, wherever in the world, they have nothing. So they're more grateful for the things that they do have, whereas the people who have everything are less grateful. And I think that's just a product of oversaturation. And once again, going back to we're so used to having everything at our fingertips, we're oversaturated. So gratitude isn't necessarily, something that we're used to. We have everything, especially in the Western world. So I think before you can feel gratitude, you have to do exactly what you said, positive mindset. Set your intention every day to have a positive day, and notice when you start to falter in that. And after practicing that, once you start feeling good, once you have, self-gratitude, then you can start sharing that with other people and feeling it towards other people. But, when you're dealing with anxiety, depression, self-gratitude is probably the last thing you're ever going to think about. You're just holding on for your life. So start by being positive, I think, is the big thing for me. Like, that was it. Like, get up every day and go, okay, so today might be totally messed up, but I'm going to face it the best I can. And that's all you can do. And then just keep that momentum going all day. Whatever you got to do that. If you got to take half an hour every once in a while off work, or, take time for you. Like remember to take care of yourself. When you care about yourself, that's how you heal. There's so many times in life where we don't care about ourselves enough. We care about everybody else and what everybody else wants. And for me, I kind of saw that. I was like, it's time for me to take care of myself. So I quit my job. And not everybody can do that, but that's something I felt that I had to do. I quit my job. I went traveling. I really devoted time to healing, and taking care of myself. So in that act of self-nurturing and self-gratitude, then I was able to give gratitude to others. So, help yourself so that you can help other people, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's such powerful stuff, and again, just so good, man, so good. So, when you're saying like self-gratitude, I see it as self-love, and it gives me this analogy. I talk about Burning Man because for me, it's such a powerful and awesome experience. So, for people who don't know, 70,000 hippies in the desert, but what people don't realize is there's 10 tenets, and that's basically being a good person of radical self-expression, radical inclusion, gifting. So what happens when you get there is everybody is giving you something. There's no money. You can buy ice and coffee at center camp, but there's no money. And you're walking down the street, people are always offering you things. And it's such a loving and powerful and amazing environment, spectacular art, all that kind of stuff. And, when you hug people, there's no handshakes. It's all hugs, genuine, wonderful hugs for, 15 seconds, 3 minutes. It doesn't matter. It's all natural. It's not even you try. You just hug and it feels so good. And there's so much genuine love, unconditional love. But when you're going around Burning Man, you can get your shot of whiskey at any time, or a beer or something. But sometimes water can be a little bit difficult. And because you're in the middle of the desert, you need water. And you could be, you think you're going out for 5 minutes and you're gone for a day and a half outside your camp because of the madness of what's happening there. So when you're going out and you need water and you meet somebody and you're like, hey, excuse me, would you have some water? And if the person says, no, I don't have any water, you can say, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And you go on. But if the next person has water, you're like, oh my God, yes. And you drink some water and you're so excited. It's the life force. So the way that I see that is in the regular world, the default world, in our daily lives, it's self-love is the water. So if you're going up to somebody and they are depressed or anxious or worried or hurting, because life is a rough ride, man, it's really tough. You never know what someone's going through. So you show them a little love and compassion, it can go a long way. But if you don't have any water, if you don't have any self-love, you have nothing to offer them. It's self-gratitude, taking care of yourself. That's where it has to start. So if you've taken care of yourself and you're fulfilled and you have all this love to give, you can then offer that. And it's a vibrational frequency, I think, that's very, very real. And even if it's just a smile or a hug or an acknowledgement, people will see and they'll recognize that. So I think that self-love is super, super important. And most of us really struggle with that. I have some, and I think that I could definitely have more. And it's something that I've worked on a lot. And you you went to find it for yourself. And I think that, if we can all kind of just learn to be a little bit kinder to ourselves and fill up our own cups, then we can share that with others, and it can be a really powerful experience.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I think that's kind of the intriguing thing about Burning Man, now that we're on to Burning Man, is that it's such a juxtaposition to our everyday life, man. Like I live in Vancouver, so you walk around the city and, people here are decently happy with their lives. They live pretty outgoing, physical, adventurous lives, most of them. But, you walk around in any city and you don't really get that vibe. You don't really get the, hey, what do you need? I got whatever you need. And, it's the right there in an instant, ready to help you with whatever you need, and in the city environment, or even any town, basically it's kind of you against the world, and they're, whatever they need from you is for self-benefiting, and it's not really to help you, it's to help themselves. So, I think there's a lot of take. And, a lot of people get to the point where they're like, I need someone just to like give a shit about me for a minute. You know what I mean? And they go so far past the point where they need that, and then they keep going. It's like being, when you need water and you're in the desert, you're totally dehydrated and they're just trying to feed you whiskey. You know what I mean? It's like, you can drink it, you'll feel good for a while, but you're going to die in the end, like you're not going to make it. You're going to be dehydrated. It's not what you need. So I think it's a good point. I've never been to Burning Man, but I think that atmosphere definitely appeals to a lot of people, and I think we need more of it. So having guys like you bringing that back to the world for all of us, on us non-burning burners, I guess you would call them. Yeah, man, we need it. We really need it.
Yeah, man, and I think there, with anything, there's if you go online, you're going to see a lot of hate and a lot of bad stuff, and there are some things that need a lot of work. But I think for me, the big point of it is just people giving a crap about another person.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is in an environment, in a festival type atmosphere, but that's who and what we are as humans. We do care. We do have empathy for each other. And we go about our days forgetting that, and masking it and putting up these imaginary walls or layers of ego, right? And it's like, I am a business guy, or I am this, I can't associate, blah, 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 all the way down the line. And we don't really, really connect with people as deeply as we could. And, it's not to fix everything in each community. It's just to be an open and honest individual and to connect people and do what you can.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We've been going for about an hour here, and it's been fantastic. I think that we've touched on a really great points. Is there anything that you wanted to add before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my biggest thing with this whole topic, just going back to the beginning, is it's important for people to know if you're dealing with these symptoms, because obviously you could go on forever and ever. And I think that we've raised a lot of good points. I think getting back to it, when you feel like there's nowhere left to go, remember, you're never alone. There's always people that are willing to help you. Maybe, they're not right in front of you, but there's always somebody there for you. And sometimes all it takes is one phone call to just get somebody there that's going to show you that love, that's going to give you the a little bit of caring, so that you can care for yourself, so that you can feel like you're being taken care of and that things can get better, So you're never alone, and just have faith. You got to have faith to get through it. You got to be strong, and there's moments in all of our lives where these things kind of come up and then they dissipate, and they come up and they dissipate. But, you got to believe you can do it. Be strong and know you're not alone. That's my big message. And things can get better. They will get better. There's no doubt about it. I'm an average human being. I'm no one special, but I definitely got through it naturally. No pills, no drugs. It really does help to follow those simple guidelines: meditation, exercise, diet. Just those in itself, that's you taking care of yourself, right? So that is a step in the positive direction. And those things start to fuel a positive lifestyle that helps you rewire your brain. and be focused in the moment. So yeah, to all those people, I feel for you, and just know that you're not alone. You're not alone out there.
That's awesome, man. Well, I wanted to add to that, but I think that what you said, they're very beautiful words and very simple and very applicable. As we go about our days, I think that the one thing that you said that was really important is really finding the answer for yourself, right? Knowing that there's no way you can like go out. You didn't use pills or anything. You kind of intuitively found your own answer. Then you had faith, and it could be faith for yourself. It can be faith in something else, but knowing that you can get through it, and then that there are people and you are not alone. So I just want to double down on everything that you just said, because I think it's extremely powerful, extremely simple and applicable. And those are the things that allow you to make monumental changes. And so if you can just start there, right? Like you said, with the intention, with your daily intention, and that's hand in hand with my thought of the most empowering perspective. How can I feel at peace today? How can I go, about my day with joy and love for myself, or even just a little bit of a jump from where you are. So, I think that we're really complimenting what each other is saying. And I just want to thank you for coming on the show and doing this with me. I hope that this is the first of many to come, where we can just bring up interesting topics and hopefully shed some light that might, be a perspective that people can enjoy and get a little bit of information from and a little insight from. Because as you said, we are nobody special. We're struggling just as hard as anybody else, but at least we've come to, had some experience that have helped us along the way, and hopefully we can share that with others. So, my friend, once again, thank you so much, and I'm sure I will be talking to you again soon.
Thanks for having me, man. Talk to you soon.
Peace, buddy.
Peace.